everybody. How you doing? Hey, guys. This is a first for us, and first of all, thank you so much for carving some time out of your evening and to be with Dave and I. And I don't know what to expect, but I'm sure looking forward to it very, very much. Dave, he and I have crossed paths many years ago, and anyway, without diving into too much information first, Dave Rearick, everybody, right here.
And of course, you all know Johnny V.
Thank you, guys. Hey, guys. Those of you who might not know, Dave sailed around the world in 2014-15 by himself, 8.5, 9 months, something like that. And,
not necessarily one of the best decisions I ever made in my life, but I made it anyway.
I played in Toledo, Ohio. Does that count?
It does. Counts a lot.
Anyway, just looking out there, there's so many people that are so special to us in very, very many ways, and thank you very much for being here tonight. We're gonna talk or do whatever we do for about an hour or so. We are gonna take a break at some point. Dave has got some amazing material back there. I got hats. And but anyway, that's not. We want to really try to share some authentic moments that we think might be fun to talk about, but we want to engage with you guys. And please feel free at any point, keeping it very informal. Raise your hand if you have a question about anything. I think what brought Dave and I together is we're a couple of dreamers from yay high to now. And I'm going to be quiet now and let Dave say a few things. Dave Rearick, everybody.
Well, thanks. I don't. A lot of you I know from watching Johnny V play music and seeing you in the crowd, and a lot of you I know because we've been long friends. Some of you are fellow sailors and some not, but yeah, this is just designed to be a bit impromptu and just kind of go with the flow and tell a few stories and sing a few songs. Love to have your questions if you can. I'm not as stage savvy as Johnny is, but so I wouldn't be able to see any hands over that way because of the lights. But so you can just blurt out a little bit too. So hey, my first question for Johnny is, how did music come into your life? Where did this music world start for you?
Shawnee Mission, Kansas. By 1964, 65. I got my first record ever, Meet the Beatles.
Yeah.
And, but actually during that time, the Monkees were going on too.
Hey, the Monkees.
And I don't know if it's because they were more available on TV or whatever, but there was a while before I started understanding things that the Monkees were kind of ahead for me at that time. And then so anyway, it's 64, 65. My dad got transferred a lot, and we just happened to be living in Shawnee Mission, Kansas. And I would beat on the steel garbage cans, and I always wanted to be a drummer. That was my ambition.
So that was the precursor to the 5-gallon drum situation you see in Chicago on the street level, beating on the garbage cans.
When did you realize that you had a connection with not only water, but you wanted to sail it and conquer it in some manner?
Oh gosh, our family, my dad used to like to fish, so we were always messing around in rowboats and stuff like that. But sailing for me, like a lot of you, we grew up right here along the lakefront, and we would go down to the beach. The family would go down to the beach, and we had some neighbors, the Tittles, and Pam Tittle, who was a year older than I was, asked me when I was 12 years old if I wanted to go out for a sail on a sunfish. And I went over and sort of asked my mom, "Mom, is that all right? Can I do that?" And she goes, "Yeah, go ahead." So we took off on the sunfish, and 15 minutes later the boat was heeled over, and I was hooked. And it was that simple. From there, at 12 years old, you're not really allowed as a boy to go sit in the library and take out books. You're supposed to be playing sports and stuff. So I had to take out sailing books out of the library, and I had to kind of hide them on my way home. But I read just about every sailing book I could get out of the library and everything I could about sailing at that point. It just stuck with me. It went right to my soul.
Does everybody know what a sunfish is? I got a sunfish story.
Yeah. Go for it, Johnny.
My parents were from the Marinette Menominee area of Wisconsin, Michigan, and so after I might have been about 10, 11 years old, we went up to that area, and my dad always had a favorite spot to go on vacation, and of course, part of having the resort, or being in a cabin at the resort, you would also have the access to a sunfish. So I, learned a little bit on this certain day, and I was ready to ask, which then was my new stepmother. I thought I could, maybe try to get into good point and say, hey, let's go, I'm ready to take you sailing. And so we went out there, and we got out there about a half a mile to a mile, and I didn't realize what the phrase meant of being calmed. and those of you might not know, it means you just don't go anywhere.
Do you know what it means now?
Yeah. and so I'm thinking, all right, well, let's come about. And so I'm slowly like pushing it about, and we just I could not get anything going. And so here, my dad's new wife is seeing this from shore, and he finds a rowboat, rows out there, and ties us up and rows us back in. And so that was my first sailing venture.
I spent an awful lot of my young years on a sunfish with no wind out of Lake Michigan, and I would call friends and say, hey, let's go sailing, and they say, Dave, there's no wind. I said, what's that got to do with it? Let's just go. We take the boat out, and we get on the bow, and we just paddle around like we were on a big surfboard, but it's just good fun. Yeah, good fun.
There's so many questions I have to ask about your venture, but I'd love to weave in and out. And first, I'd like to ask you, was there somebody in particular that inspired you, or what really got you pointing in the direction that got you to where you are today?
No, I did it all on my own.
Okay.
Of course, I think all of us, have some adult sort of mentor in our lives when we were kids, and there were probably a number of them for me with sailing, but there was a good friend, Tom McDermott, who wasn't so much a friend at that point in time, but he was friends of other friends, and as probably 16, 15, 14 years old, he was actually an Olympic sailor, and I'd be racing against him on the sunfish with Pam Tittle and these other friends and all kind of stuff, and boy, Tom's been a lifelong friend and always supported me in all these endeavors, and every time I told him what I was going to do, he never once suggested that wasn't a good idea. And you get those friends that will one of the funny things we say in the sailing world is a good sailing friend will tell you that's not a good idea, but they won't stop you from going. So yeah, Tom was a huge mentor. My mother also was just hugely aware of nature, and she loved to hike in the dunes, and she really brought the nature part of being at one with nature to me in my life. And Johnny, you got a song that went with those early years when you first learned your music?
Sure, yeah. A mutual friend, and we'll get to the connection of us, but Rick Watson, who's an artist, I don't know if you remember the Short Brothers. They used to play around the area. When I did my first solo album, it was at Barefoot Studios in Valparaiso. And
Rick used to play with Jerry Short around quite a bit. I followed these guys' music going all the way back to, I was underage trying to sneak into bars to hear music, but Rick has since relocated to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, or York, Maine, close by, and so when I'm up that way, which I am, a number of times a year, there's a little place called the Dolphin Striker Bar, and it's probably half the size of this place, and the ceiling's another 4 feet lower. It's in the basement of the place, but on Monday night they have old school music. It's a big jam session with a bunch of people, and the place is elbow to elbow.
We got to get there sometime.
Yeah, put that on your list of places to stop and see if you ever get to Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Well, this song is the first song that he sang with me on, and a couple years ago, this is a true story. For those of you who have been to the Neil Young holiday shows that we do, that's I think not this year, but last year, I went up with a ukulele. I kind of was planning on doing a Neil Young song, but then something tapped me on the shoulders, like, you know what? Take one of your own songs and end with that. And that's what I did. And this song I ended up doing a video, and I sing this a lot with Paul Bolger, the lead singer from Mr. Blotto, and it's a song called Your Heaven. But this is the first song I sang with Rick. piece of your heaven, where I long to stay. Be you cry and sing like it ain't cold out in the rain, and the torch light that burns inside of me. Wiser the fool I am, distance I can see. This hole in my soul, you know it's got to me. I don't want no casualty. Can I have just a piece of your heaven, where I long to be? And the spirit in my heart is tearing me apart, and it cries for your company. Wiser the fool I am, distance I can see. This hole in my soul, you know it's got to me. I don't want no casualty. Can I have just a piece of your heaven, where I long to be? Trusting all them words you said, I lie awake in my bed thinking there's no place I'd rather be. I lie awake in my bed trusting all them words you said, I think there's no place I'd rather be. Oh, oh, no place I would rather be.
Very nice, very nice. Just in case anybody has any odd thoughts, like I'm going to sing or play guitar, that's not going to happen. So, when you're a single-handed sailor, you're on a boat by yourself. I mean, as single-handed sailors, there's another one in the back there, Dave Wagner, who's also traveled around the world on his boat single-handed. But we're kind of an odd lot. So I have this great friend of mine, Joe Harris, who when I took off on my trip, Joe came out with me to get started, and we sailed together for a mile or so before he gave me a salute and turned back. A year later, Joe took off and did his own trip single-handed around the world. And Joe loves Jameson's Irish whiskey. So all his friends brought down a fifth of Jameson's Irish whiskey. So Joe had one of those 5-gallon collapsible containers, and it was full of Jameson's whiskeys when he left. He had to resupply in New Zealand. But one of the funniest stories he told me, he says, "Oh, Dave," he says, "you know, you kept telling me there's no wind south of Bermuda." And he said, I got out there, and sure enough, there was no wind south of Bermuda. So he said, I had an air jam guitar night to end all nights. He said he played every rock and roll song, air guitared it, and sung at the top of his lungs, and passed out drinking Jameson whiskey. I wasn't that good, and I'm not going to sing in front of you, so don't expect that.
You know, just the other day, some regular Tuesday people came up to me and said, what got you and Dave together? And I said, you know what, let's ask that question next Thursday. And so, knowing that question is out there, what is your side of the story?
Do you really want your wife to know we were in jail together? I've always followed music. My mother was a musician. She loved Joan Baez, and she had a Martin guitar, and she would play those songs. And my family loved folk music. So Pete Seeger and Bob Gibson, and of course I would travel into Holstein's in Chicago when I was underage, or the Earl of Old Town, to see these famous guys and all famous women sing songs and all that stuff. But so I've always followed music. And Leroy's down there in Porter, you know, this is the Bikers Roadhouse Blues Bar Extraordinaire. Always has some great music and all, and I would always frequent the place to listen to different bands play and stuff. And somebody said, you know, you ought to come on with a Wednesday night or Thursday night? Thursday nights, there's a band called Kibbles and Bits that plays. So I stopped in there. Which was Take a Bite unplugged, right? Sort of unplugged Take a Bite. And I mean, the place was twice as packed as this is here, and that's where I first, you know, took notice of Johnny V. And they played a song called Galileo, and Johnny was walking off the stage for a break, and I asked him, I said, who plays that song? And so he turned me on to Indigo Girls. Mm-hmm. But that's my first recollection of knowing who Johnny V was. And that was like 48 years ago.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. It's 15, 20 years back?
It was it mid to late 90s, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Late on Thursdays, it was Maggie, myself, and Dickie, and Bobby Mills.
Yeah, some absolutely fabulous musicians. The heart of which was the Take a Bite Man.
So let's do the song that kind of connected us, I guess, right?
Go for it, yeah. This is Galileo by the Indigo Girls.
Galileo said he's on the block. The crime was looking up the truth. Through the bombshells of my daily head explode. Try to trace them to my youth. Then you bring up reincarnation over a couple of beers the other night. Now I'm serving time for mistakes made by another in another lifetime. How long till my soul gets right? Any human being never reached that kind of light. Called on the rested soul of Galileo, king of night vision, king of insight. Then I bring up my emotion, which I never could explain. Some other fool across the ocean years ago must have crashed his little airplane. How long till my soul gets right? Any human being never reached that kind of light. Call on the rested soul of Galileo, king of night vision, king of insight. I'm not making a joke, you know me, I'll take everything so seriously. If we wait for the time till our souls get it right, at least I know there'll be no nuclear annihilation. In my last life, I still ain't right. I still ain't right, yeah, oh no. To those before me, it's all I really have to say. Maybe you squandered big bucks in your last life, now I have to pay. But again I feel like some sort of inspiration to let the next life off that hook. She said, look what I have to overcome in my last life. I think I'll write a book. How long till my soul gets right? Any human being never reached that kind of light. Call on the rested soul of Galileo, king of night vision, king of insight, king of insight, oh, king of insight, yeah. How long, oh, oh, oh.
Very nice, John.
Thank you. We've been monogamous ever since.
Yeah. So what's your side of that story? What's your first recollection of meeting this odd character here?
I think, and anybody who plays music, we seem to know when somebody's paying attention and when they're not. and it's very, and we're always very grateful and very, you know, it's when somebody seems to be like asking for certain songs that aren't normally what you hear every day, and there's a certain attention we feel that. We sit here and we feel that, whether you're back there in the corner or right here, and you brought something. It's interesting how you share with me now, because I don't remember at Leroy's, how you used to be kind of in the corner and quiet, but you observed, and but then when we finally started talking, I don't remember exactly where, but it was bringing up that song Galileo, but then it was obvious that you followed a lot of other acoustic musicians, and I felt very, very grateful the fact that even you know, I was one of them that you went to see, and I guess it's always been in my DNA that when people come out, and even though you might forget names or not know names, I try to make a point of saying thank you, and I think that's important. I just, you know, you want, you know, you just don't know what it just part of it is for me anyway, and so having conversation with you and then getting to know you and you know, you talking about your Friday night trips out on this, you know, you invited me a million times, and then Thanksgiving night where you have the big family jamboree, and I haven't made one of them yet, but I will. But that being said, the fact I know Dave travels a lot, and he does all sorts of work, and when he comes here, and I know when you're in the room, it's always very special because you've chosen, you know, me a lot of times, and I'm very grateful for that. So.
Well, you know, it's interesting when you say the thank you part about it all. And you know, we Johnny referred to Friday nights, and it's been about 25 or 6 years ago. Myself with a guy I sailed with, Bob Forney, who some of you may or may not have known from Michigan City. Bob was a pretty amazing person. And in the end, he was the CEO of America's Second Harvest, and then set up the World Hunger Fund and all that stuff. Died way too young, but Bob and I were partners in a boat called Geronimo. And a good friend, well, like one of the first weeks we had the boat here in Michigan City, on a Friday night, I was down messing around on the boat, and Bob Cutterback was in the harbor, and he said, "Hey Dave, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just messing around on the boat." And Bob says, "We should go sailing." And Bob was one of our regular crew members on the race team. And so we took some friends out sailing that night, and Bob looked at me and said, "You know, Dave, we've got an obligation to share this with people." And I agree with that 100%. So every Friday night for all these years, all you have to do is show up at 6 o'clock at night and go out sailing on Geronimo, and there's so many people that went sailing with us. And
that's awesome, yeah.
We, you know, but the best part is, you know, knowing that they're having a great time, and at the end of the night when they say thank you, and vice versa, and really appreciating, you know, what we all have to give to this world. Yeah.
You know, when you talk about the generosity part, and you know, I know that's part of my list of questions I have for you. You've talked a few times about you doing these things for kids in Chicago. Is there? Can you amplify on that?
Yeah. So I'm a carpenter by trade. I built a few homes, and I'm a handyman. I change light bulbs and fix leaky plumbing and stuff like that too. But so I don't come from a wealthy family or a sailing family or anything like that. But so, like so many other kids, when I was young, you know, the fun things you got to do came as opportunities that people shared with you. And now that I'm a little bit older than 20-some years old, you know, I'm fortunate to have all right. Well, I'm just over 30 by 30-some years, but you know, I have a chance to give back, and so I spend a lot of time with kids. We've got one program, the Atlantic Cup race, and I'm the coordinator for the kids education program. So over the course of the race, which goes on the Class 40 boats, which is the same boat that I sailed around the world. And I actually competed in the Atlantic Cup race in 2012 and 13, and we won it in 2013. But so every harbor we're in, I go to the schools. This year it's happening again. So in April, I'll go to the schools in Charleston, South Carolina, and visit the classrooms and talk to them about the ocean, sustainability, and about the world and sailing. And then I'll do the same thing in New Jersey and New York, and then up in Portland, Maine. And then when the boats actually come into the harbors, we get the kids down to the boats to visit the skippers and actually get on the boats and stuff like that. So that's a really cool event. And then also, as an ambassador for 11th Hour Racing, which is a pretty amazing organization that supports an awful lot of things in the world, not just in sailing, but it's part of the Schmidt Family Foundation. And the Schmidts, Eric Schmidt was he was the executive CEO of Google. So this is their family's effort to give back to the world. But they sponsor me as 11th Hour Racing Ambassador, and we've just set up a program in Chicago the last couple of years called Chicago Maritime Arts Center, where we bring inner city kids into a program and we build a boat. We build a little rowboat, like a sunfish. It's about 12 foot long. The kids get in and they screw it together and glue it, and they paint it and put their name on the side. And then we launch them and they get to learn how to row on the river and stuff. And so it's really kind of a pretty amazing thing. Yeah. So we're trying to give back to the kids the same opportunities that people gave me.
Okay, now let's talk about your trip a little bit.
Good.
You're preparing to be away for 8.5 months. Well, do you know it's about the time frame of ahead of time, just from experience, like your friend Tom? And
yeah.
So you knew about.
You're talking about the trip out to California? So yeah, well, you know, sailing around the world single-handed is actually a relatively recent history sport. I mean, Robin Knox Johnson was the first person to sail single-handed nonstop in 1969, and that spawned a few different races. And I'd endeavored to want to do a race. So over the course of 30 or 40 years of having this dream and holding on to this dream and trying not to let it go and trying to get there, I was pretty well versed in what it took to get around the world. So I knew
your initial dream come up? It says, you know what, I'm going around the world.
You know, when I first started to sail, when I was 12, 13, and then read all those books, I was reading about these guys and gals who sailed single-handed across the Atlantic. That was a really big thing, the O-Star race. And I started with thinking, geez, it'd be really cool to sail single-handed across the Atlantic someday. And then came the BOC races, and of course, you know, you can't help but start to build that dream out to going around the world. But I'm sure by the time I was 15 or 16, that dream was stuck in the back of my mind somewhere. Someday I'm going to sail around the world single-handed.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. Well, see, when I read your book, I mean, I had no.
It took 8 months and 40 years.
Well, I remember when I read his book, you guys, and those of you who don't have it yet, I was, yeah, you got to get it. Not only because of what he shares his experience, but I never realized how good of a writer you are. I mean, it just, those of you who have it, am I right? Is it just,
thank you.
It's like, man, if I have anything to write, will you write my book? I mean, you really, you don't have to be a sailor to understand. You made it very, very visual and very understandable for a novice person, and you made it fun. You kept it engaging. Really
well, that's one of the, I truly believe that, you know, if we don't share these experiences we have with other people, then they really don't have a whole lot of value, you know. So why sail 8.5 months around the world and have all that experience and then not be able to share it with people who don't have that opportunity to do that? And I like reading the stories of, you know, people who do something that I don't get a chance to do. It's fun to share the information back and forth. So
absolutely,
it came from the heart for that reason. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Johnny, I got a quick question for you. I mean, you asked me if there was a mentor in my life or someone really special that you know, brought things to life for me. Was there somebody in your life, a musician or somebody like that really sparked you and helped you know that that's what you wanted to be?
I think there were like 3 different generations that helped me. One was Don Schelmer, and at the age of, we were in junior high, and we're putting our first garage band together, you know, and then somebody says, hey John, there's this guy.
Were you using the garage garbage cans?
No, actually, backing up a little bit, I was trying to make it in drumming in 3rd and 4th grade, you know, when you have to lease an instrument out, so I had a Ludwig snare drum there, but I had already taken guitar lessons for about a half a year, so I knew a few chords, and so when you get your first garage band together, it really isn't about who the players are, it's having your friends, right? So I knew a few chords, even though I was going to be the drummer, and the very first song that I ever learned as a band was House of the Rising Sun. And so I learned that, and next thing you know, I'm staying on guitar, and I lived on a block where mostly everybody was older than me, and so when I saw these other garage bands playing Cream and you know, that era of music, I just kept saying, man, I want to do that. I want to do that, And so it was always, but going back to your original question, you know, Don, he was, well, here I gotta show you something. Don and I wrote an album in 1976, 77, somewhere around then. And
about how old were you at that point?
16, 15, 16, 17. And so we wrote an album. And because we knew something, it was cool to play other people's music, but it didn't. It's like, well, we got to do something of ourselves. We bought a four-track TEC reel-to-reel recorder, and we recorded an album called Everclear. And so we were going to print 200 of these. So we printed 200 cases, but we ran out of money and couldn't print the album. So I dug up, here's the album, Everclear, and
that's beautiful. Remember these album sleeves, guys? Yeah,
yep.
They're long since gone.
And so here are the names of the songs that you can't hear. Okay, Within Our Gain, A Water Child, then The Mirage, Finding Her, and Remembrance. So that had a sad ending. Then 1 in a Million, The Ship.
Ah, all right.
And actually, I called it in parentheses Iris, I-R-O-S. I didn't know what it meant, but I really liked that word.
Was that the name of your first boat? Your Sunfish?
It will be when I get one.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Tales of a Rainforest, and then ending on a good note. And so, you know, this was, you know, where you have it. It was registered in 1980, but anyway, there's a couple of things that we got to be on the Steve and Gary show. Remember Coho Lit Breakfast? We were on there one time, and anyway, so a gal, and I wish I could remember the author, did this drawing. If you guys want to pass this around, feel free. And in the back, there's a picture.
That's a historic artifact, though. Be careful. Don't spill any rum on it or beer.
And in the back, there's a picture. We were at a forest preserve in Park Forest, Illinois, over by Arbor Trails, and that's where we took that photo at. But anyway, Don and I, we wrote some music, and he was my first generation. Second generation would be, again, these are people who really kind of made me up my game, and that would be Dickie Lesh. And those of you who saw Take a Bite, Dickie was the other guitar player. Again, he kept me up on my game, and then I would have to say the last has been of the last years. I was inspired a lot by Paul Bolger and Mr. Blotto. They brought in a level of music on a local level that I hadn't seen before. And it really just made me dig in, and I started a project called the Medicine Wheel Project, and this was in 2001. And right before 9/11, Paul was our voice. I wrote all the music, and we had the drummer from the Crop Puppies, Chris. He would come do the drumming and be a mixture of different people. And I remember Paul was going to come back, but he got stuck in Ireland for a couple of weeks during 9/11, and so
tough place to be stuck.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
But anyway,
when he got on an expense account, hopefully.
Yeah. When he got back, we continued and we finished, and the Medicine Wheel Project got released in 2004. But again, that was where there were all sorts of Chicago people that collaborated with us, and I was very proud of that project, and that's available here tonight too. So
cool. Yeah, Johnny's got a bunch of CDs and stuff on the table over there. So now you've also told me you had a real affinity for Rush, the band Rush, a lot too. You didn't mention them. Were they part of that mix or not?
Yes, Rush was definitely my heroes, and those of you know, Neil Peart passed away about 3-4 weeks ago, and it's interesting how, and not on purpose, but there's a lot of bands from Canada, I guess I like them. You know, Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, Rush, but anyway, yeah, there were different inspirations, and but yet I'll never forget in Topeka, Kansas when I first saw my first Simon & Garfunkel album. It said Bookends, and I just and that's where I think the acoustic side of me really, if there's anything that inspired me more, it's anything was probably Simon & Garfunkel. Yeah.
You know, it's nice to be with a crowd that knows who Simon & Garfunkel is. There's so many of the old folk musicians that I used to follow us like that most people say, who are you talking about?
Yeah.
So do you remember any of those songs or riff or whatever from that very first album you just showed everybody that's passing around here?
I remembered some of the ship musically. I can give you like maybe about 30 seconds of something that.
It was very, very early Johnny V here, guys. You need to pull that one out of the archives, Johnny, and finish it, man. That's
well,
kind of nice.
We know where the reel-to-reel is, so we're going to do our best to try to get that and get it to John Carpenter's Thunderclap studio and try to transfer that. So that's going to be.
That would be great. That'd be great to hear that one full out.
I would love to do that. Absolutely. Yeah. I wanted to mention also you were going back to your the thing you did for the kids, and that's. You know, when some people ask me, do I know so-and-so as musicians, I think that's another thing that when you come together, what music is done is it does have a way of generating, you know, doing good things for others on that. And that's been a commitment that it's always been, when you mentioned Leroy's always been very good about his establishment and of whether he gets a bike run together or things like that. Were you ever a part of any of that with him at all?
You know, I've been to a few of the fundraisers that Leroy's always hosting and stuff like that, but I always wanted to ride a motorcycle. When I was younger, I just dreamed of getting on a motorcycle and hanging off, you know, cross country and touring and stuff. I guess that right along the same lines of taking off on a boat and going around the world, but motorcycles were illegal in my family. They were forbidden in my family, and my dad died when I was 21 years old, and a week later I bought a motorcycle. And it was the middle of winter, and so I had it in the garage. And the funny thing is, you know, it was probably March, and I had the garage door open. And my aunt and uncle lived just 2 doors down. So my aunt was hosting Easter Sunday dinner, and my grandmother was there, and my families, my sisters, siblings, and brother are there, and my aunt and uncle and their kids, and we're all sitting around the dining room table. And my aunt says, "Dave, was that a motorcycle in your garage?" And I said, with a bit of a stammer, well, it belongs to a friend of mine, and I'm just storing it for the winter. When I got home from Easter dinner, about an hour later, I got on the phone and called my friend Matt and said, "Matt, you must have bought a motorcycle." And he goes, "What?" I said, "You just bought a motorcycle." He goes, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "I just lied in front of my grandmother. So if you don't buy this motorcycle, I'm a liar." But I always love that Neil Young song, "Long May You Run." I just, you know, that just always makes me feel like that. Yeah.
Can you do that for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Great. That's a wonderful song. Yeah. It just, you know, there's a sense of freedom when you're out on a boat, just and the horizon is endless, and you're just going to sail and sail. And I gotta believe, I want to believe that on a motorcycle there's a lot of that same sense of freedom. I can just go anywhere that this bike will take me, or I can go anywhere this boat will take me.
Or on a lawnmower.
Or a lawnmower if you're riding a lawnmower.
That's me, a lawnmower. So lovely.
We've been through some things together, drunk some memories still to come. We've driven through some stormy weather, long may you run, long may you run, long may you run. Though these changes have come, with your chrome mount shining in the sun, long may you run. It's down on Blind River, 1962, when I last saw you alive. We hit the shift on a long decline, long may you run, long may you run, long may you run, though these changes have come. With your chrome mount shining in the sun, long may you run. Bet the Beach Boys have got you now. In the wave, they sing in Caroline. We hit the road on the ocean boulevard, get into the surf on time. Long may you run, long may you run, though these changes have come. With your chrome out shining in the sun, long may you run, long may you run, oh, long may you run, though these changes have come. With your chrome out shining in the sun, long may you run.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. I hope someday that when Johnny's singing that in one of these evenings that Neil Young walks in the door and just kind of leans up to the wall over there, tips his hat down a little low and just smiles.
The actual story is they wrote that song about their original vehicle that towed their equipment around.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's like interesting story. But,
Yeah.
I got so many. Let's go. Okay, let's take your trip now. You're out there. First of all, you going east or west when you leave? When you go around the world, where do you go, guys?
Well, true to life, you can go either way. So I left.
The world is round.
The world is round.
Okay. Go on YouTube. There's weird stuff out there.
I was very sorry to hear that just last week a guy built a rocket to try to fly up and see if the world was flat or not. It didn't pay out very well for him.
Oh, geez.
Sorry to hear that. But, so I went east about. So I headed east.
Okay.
Dave Wagner in the back of the room there, he went west. So he went the other way around.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But
that'd be so cool if you guys left at the same time and just kind of high-fived each other.
We did them a few years apart, but the typical race course is east about. So you would start in Newport, Rhode Island, or in England, and you'd race down to Cape Town, South Africa, and then from there to Oceania, either Australia or New Zealand, and from there around the Horn to Uruguay, and then back up towards the finish. And I tried to replicate that race course. We had Bodacious Dream built to do the Global Oceans race, which was a single-handed race around the world.
All right, so stop right there. You said Bodacious Dream was built for this. So why don't you give a little history of Bodacious Dream, which is the name of the boat or the name of the vessel that you sailed, right?
Yeah, so the in about 2006 or so, one of my single-handed sailing friends had become very successful in his business, and he tapped me on the shoulder to help him manage his boats. And then, you know, one day we were putting some sails away on one of the boats, and he said to me, he says, "You really want to do this single-handed race around the world?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, I'm about to the point of just, you know, buying an old boat and grabbing a bag of groceries and taking off. And later that year, so I had that boat that he had. We'd taken it down to Florida. We were doing the Pineapple Cup race, which was from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, down to Montego Bay, Jamaica. And I was putting that boat together for that race for the guys, and I got an email from him, and an email said, "If you really want to do this race around the world, we need to get you the boat to do it in." And it was like, you know, when you're like 9 or 10 years old in grade school, and you get a note from a girl that says, "Do you like me? Yes or no, circle 1." And you read that note 25 times. You take it home, it's in your pocket, you take it home, you read it in the mirror, you read it backwards, forwards. I did the same thing with that email. I looked at that computer and I read it 10 times. I held the computer upside down, I shut it off, I turned it back on, it was still there. And that friend Tom McDermott was with me, helping me, and I said, "What do you make of this, Tom?" He goes, "I think you just found your sponsor." So from there, I had a sponsor to build a boat and compete in the Global Oceans race, and so we needed a Class 40 boat. Class 40 is a specific type of boat. It's 40 feet long. It's a box roll, so the boat can be designed by different designers, but it has to fit within certain parameters to be somewhat competitive racing around the world. And we chose a boat that was being built in Wellington, New Zealand, and Bodacious Dream came to be in Wellington, New Zealand.
How long did it take to build?
So it took about 6 months to build it. We commissioned it about June. I don't remember. I should know the exact date, but I don't recall that. And I flew down, you know, maybe a month later, because I wanted to meet the boat builders and stuff. I just wanted to know these guys, and I wanted them to know me, that I wasn't just some guy, you know, up in America with too much money that wanted a boat. So I flew into Wellington, New Zealand. You know, it's like 24 hours of flight. You leave Chicago at 6 at night, you fly to LA, sit for 2 hours, and then you fly all night long, you get into Wellington, New Zealand. And I rented a car, and you know, the cars are the left-hand drive. So I had to ask someone where my hotel was, and they gave me directions, and I very, very carefully drove to the hotel. And then I had to go back to the airport to pick up Lapo, who was the brainchild behind this boat and the project manager. And so I turned around at the hotel, and I drove back out, and I did the first thing you always do wrong in the wrong country is I looked the wrong way on the road and pulled out right in front of another car. And almost wiped out my, you know, everything right there. And so I was just petrified. So I'm driving very carefully down the road back to the airport, and there's an airport limousine shuttle. And so I followed that shuttle. It took me an hour to get back to the airport, but I followed that shuttle to every hotel, and they picked up people until I got back to the hotel, got back to the airport. And I pulled into the you know, into the airport pickup line, and Lapo's standing there. I've never met this guy before. I don't even know what he looks like, but he's standing there with a sailing magazine. He's holding up a sailing magazine. I said, "Well, that must be Lapo." So he goes to get in the passenger side of the car, and I said, "No, here, you drive." And he goes, "Oh, you want me to drive?" And I said, "Well, you don't want me to drive, you know." So we spent the day together visiting the electronics guys and the mast makers and the sail makers and all the people involved in the thing. And Lapo says to me, he says, "What is it you're going to do with this boat?" And I looked at him, I kind of thought he already knew, but I said, "I'm going to compete in the single-handed Global Oceans race." At which point he got really excited about this, because that's really kind of a cool thing to be building a boat for that. The next day we were down in Wellington, and we visited the boat building shop, and I got to meet the guys, and the hull and the deck were just coming together, and I made some just phenomenal friends down there. They all got really excited about the project and excited about sailing around the world. And they all went that extra bit to make sure the boat was right for me and was going to get me around the world safely. Unfortunately, that race, the Global Oceans race, got canceled. And my sponsors said, "Well, you're all dressed up and ready to go to the dance. If you want to go ahead and go, go ahead and go." So I tried to leave as quick as I could before they changed their mind.
What was your scariest moment?
You know, that's
Blue whale.
That's, you know, I get asked that question all the time, and it's one of the most difficult questions to answer, because I'm not frightened out there on the water. To me, being scared is when something completely surprises you that you're not expecting, and it's really a bit beyond your ability to control it. When I'm out on the water, I really understand the boat and the weather and the wind. I'm not going to say it's not edgy. I'm not going to say it's an everyday type of thing, but it's not, you know, a big storm is a lot of work, and it's real edgy, and it's concerning, and you have to really pay attention, but it doesn't really scare me. Like driving down 94 in a snowstorm when a semi-truck decides that you're going too slow because you're doing 70, he wants to do 85, and you can't see out the windshield. That's the point where I'm not scared. So there were some amazingly edgy experiences and they're written in the book, and I don't want to be a spoiler, but
it's a tease.
It's a tease, yeah.
Tease.
But you know, you know, there's one particular situation where you know, all could have been lost if things hadn't gone very well thought out. And I guess the spoiler is I'm here, so they did go. They did go okay.
And the pirates.
So the gentleman's asking me here about pirates and stuff. You have to understand that the course that I was sailing takes you down to the Southern Ocean, basically south of Africa, south of Australia, New Zealand, and that type of thing. So when you see pictures of the pirates and stuff, they generally are in shorts, no shirt, bare feet. They're in very warm water. So Somalia is way up the northeastern coast of Africa. In much warmer waters, and I was nowhere near that. So I was never in waters that are filled with pirates, so I didn't have to worry about that.
You're in waters that really have high waves and stuff.
Yeah, there's serious weather down in that part of the world. There's serious weather out here in Lake Michigan. I don't know if you saw it the last couple of days, or that storm we had back in January. That was some crazy stuff. And some of the worst weather I've ever sailed in is on Lake Michigan, primarily because on the ocean, when you get a bad storm, you can kind of say, okay, you know, this is really getting nasty and I'm getting beat up. I can just adjust my course about 10 degrees and things are much more comfortable, and this storm will pass in a day, and then I can come back to course and go where I'm going. You can't do that on Lake Michigan. You know, on Lake Michigan, you're going to run ashore in 20 miles. So you're going to run ashore in a couple hours. So you either have to tackle the storm head on and get in the harbor, or I don't know what else you do. But yes, there's significant weather as you get down to the southern parts of the world, and those oceans are very desolate. There's no longer is there shipping around that part of the world. It all goes through the Panama Canal and across more temperate climes for the most part. So you're really awfully lonely when you're between South Africa and Australia. There's really not much of anything between you and there. So a lot of very alone moments.
Even though you have the instruments and things like that, did you ever just kind of look up and see the stars and say, this is how it used to be? You know, I think about the beginning of Amistad. Remember that movie, the Amistad? Yes. Just kind of how that's what they used with the stars, and that was it. Did you have some of those where as they say, the stars were kind of your blanket? And
yeah, there's still a very deep romantic streak in me. I try to hide it, you know.
That's hot. That's hot.
I wear my tool belt with my tape measure on my side and paint on my shirt and all that stuff. But you know, when you are out there sailing and you look up at those stars and you realize that, you know, there's a star that I want to steer by, and you just set your course by that star and you kind of let the world pass. Like you said, you know, that's the way it used to be, but that's the way it always has been and always will be. It's not used to be. And, you know, our short time on this earth of 50, 60 years is just a fleck of a second of time. So
you just said something that made me think, and now to give you a break. On my first album, I wrote a song called Lost at Sea. And you just mentioned about the world pass, and anyway, check these words out.
Go for it. Go for it.
I hope I remember how to play it. this life for me. Never stays the same. There's times that I feel lost at sea. This drive for me is winding aimlessly, and I'm crawling slow. I wonder how far does it go? The twilight of the night, we let the world just pass us by, lost at sea. See the man on the TV, he's hoping for some fame, and the dad with his kid laughing while fishing in the rain. When you dream, see a vision, maybe someday it'll all come around. In the twilight of the night, drifting on the ocean, angel guardian by our side. We let the world just pass us by, lost at sea.
Very nice, very, very nice.
Thank you. I haven't done that one in a long time. Long time.
The memory still works. That's good. That's good.
Thank you very much.
Very nice. So Johnny, was there a can you recall a moment when you realized you'd actually become the person you wanted to be? You became the musician you wanted to be and envisioned yourself being? Was there a time on stage when?
You're not what?
I think there's a drive that just, I don't know if I ever could say, that's it. I mean, there's like tonight, how can you not be grateful? And when you do the Neil shows and, you know, or these different things, I think if anything, hard work does pay off from that standpoint. It really does.
Absolutely, absolutely. And never giving up on your dream, you know?
No,
Always staying in the game.
and I think being at the age that we are, I still want to learn. I still want to, I still want to make sure when they come out, whether it's Zorns or Fish Camp or any of the other things, that we're doing something fresh and new, or there's an unexpectedness that, a surprise, an element of surprise, and but yet, if somebody wants to hear something that they've heard a lot, not be above the song, and I think staying humble and vulnerable is a nice way to go. At least for myself.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Yeah.
Thank you. And and there's been so much support, and everybody that's in this room, and my wife being here, Cindy right here.
Thanks for sharing with us tonight, Cindy.
Yeah, and when you talk about recording, that man behind the
camera.
The camera right there, John Carpenter, everybody. That is a very amazing, talented man. He's a great engineer, and I can tell so many people, he will get the best out of you, and he will tell you to get your ass back in there and do it right, and he does it to all of us many times.
I hate people like that.
Yeah, but he gets the best out of us from that. But there's just so many people we're very thankful for, and you guys, thank you so much.
And we love you for what you do.
Thank you. Yeah. Now remember, if anybody has questions for us, please feel free to jump in.
Were you able to do any fishing while you were underway?
What's that?
Was the captain able to do any fishing while he was underway?
Yeah,
you know what? I didn't do any fishing while I was underway. And everybody always says, what? Why not? So I have a really strong passion for sustainability in the environment, and when I was younger, I worked for the Outward Bound School, and I learned an awful lot about no-trace camping and no-trace living, for the most part. And when you're by yourself on a sailboat in the ocean, most of the fish you are going to catch are fairly sizable. A small one might be 6 pounds. And I didn't have any refrigeration or anything like that, so all I could do was kill that 6-pound fish and eat a small portion of it, and the rest would go to waste. And to me, that wasn't sustainable or fair. So I did not fish. We do fish from time to time. We've got a crew of 6 guys coming back from Bermuda or whatever it is, and we've caught some beautiful tuna and had some absolutely wonderful meals. But I'm particularly careful not to overstep my bounds on this earth. So
what did you eat?
Freeze-dried meals, lots and lots of freeze-dried meals.
Not even like ravioli, canned ravioli?
No. Cans create waste, and you have to carry the waste with you. So these freeze-dried meals would come in a pouch, and you boil the water, and I put the water in and let it steep for a while, and then I would add copious amounts of Worcestershire sauce and ground black pepper.
How'd you say that word again?
Copious.
Worcestershire.
Yeah, Worcestershire. Yeah. And I got some really fantastic black ground pepper in Cape Town, South Africa. And so, but interesting, the meal selection was anything from chicken teriyaki and rice to chicken fajitas to macaroni and cheese to lasagna, and pretty much it all tastes to me like Worcestershire sauce and ground black pepper. But to augment that and to make sure I got my vitamins and stuff and I was healthy and nutritious, I took as many Chips Ahoy cookies as I could.
Any alcohol?
No, well, actually, my friend Joe Harris that I talked about earlier, he gave me, we all gave Joe, a quart of Jameson's. Joe gave me like a half pint of Jameson's and said, here, you might need this along the way. So I didn't drink really on the trip at all. Drinking on the boat just doesn't work for me. It's the balance of the balance in the brain and all that stuff. So having a beer, and I just feel kind of loggy on board. But I did use that Jameson's to toast. You have to toast when you cross the equator, and you have to toast King Neptune every once in a while and thank him for the grace of being there.
So you know when you cross the equator because of the compass and longitude, latitude.
Yeah, so we navigate with GPS, and of course the GPS gives you a constant readout of latitude and longitude, and it's really kind of fun as you're sailing towards the equator. You're watching these numbers get smaller and smaller, and they start at maybe 35 or so off of North Carolina, and then they get down to 20, and then 15, and then 10, and 9 in single digits, and all of a sudden you're looking at the lat long on the GPS, and it says you're at 0,0,0,0,0, and you're crossing the equator. And the old tradition in the old days was And they called them shellbacks. If you were the first time to cross the equator, the rest of the crew on board would then have this big ceremony, and they do a sacrifice to King Neptune, and that sacrifice is generally you were dressed in your skivvies, and you were slathered with any kind of mixture of junk left over from the galley, which might be oatmeal, syrup, Crisco, etc., and then you were made to cite a few things, and you were often taken pictures of, made ridicule of, and so, well, I was all by myself, so I did all of that. I was unable to take the pictures because I was so gooped up with other stuff, so there's no documentation. Well, I'm sorry, but I was quite fortunately by myself. But I did do a very respectful toast to King Neptune and dragged a little bit of that Irish whiskey on the boat and a little bit into the ocean and a little bit down my throat and carried on.
Now you took GoPros with you, right? There's a lot of you recorded a lot of this, not only what you journaled, but video-wise too, right?
Yeah, so part of mitigating the self-indulgent experience of sailing around the world by yourself on a very expensive boat and all this kind of stuff was to bring the experience back to people and kids as well. So we have a website called Bodacious Dream Expeditions, and on there is a lot of blogs. Every couple of days I did a blog or whatever, and then we also did Explorer Guides where we kind of shared a little educational experience for kids about sea turtles or wildlife or the weather or whatever it might be. But I had a series of cameras, so I had a GoPro, but I really don't like GoPros because everything comes out very fisheye to me. So I had a real nice little Nikon that I took a lot of videos of and a lot of photographs of, and a lot of those are available on bodaciousdreamexpeditions.com. Oh, yeah. And so there's some cool stuff on there if you on a cold winter's night when you're out of liquor, it's fun to watch.
So creatures, what were the coolest creatures you saw?
Surprisingly enough, when I talk to the kids in the schools, the guys all want to know about sharks, and the women all want to know about porpoises and whales. I only saw a few whales, but that was primarily because I was not in the migration zones. But the whales are cool. The dolphins, the porpoises you come across all the time just really lift your spirits. So they look like they're just having a tremendous amount of fun. I had a really wonderful experience with a huge sea turtle that I came across, and that story is written in the book. But it dawned on me that as I was wondering what the sea turtle is doing out here in the middle of nowhere, I realized he should be wondering what I'm doing out there in the middle of nowhere. Because, as a human being, we're really not designed to thrive in the ocean environment. The ocean's a desert for us. There's no fresh water to drink unless it rains, and you're not on top of the food chain like we are on land. You're at the very bottom of the food chain. So if you end up in the ocean, you're going to be eaten. It's just that simple. So without a hard-bodied boat, you're really not supposed to be out there. So that made it an interesting perspective to have this encounter with a sea turtle, and he was big. I mean, he was I don't know, probably 3 or 4 feet in diameter. It was a very large sea turtle. So that was kind of interesting.
Well, why don't we do one more song stretch for
Great.
a few minutes? Is this cool? Everybody even enjoying this? Is that all right?
We'll do a song and take an intermission. And
this is a song that you said is always one of your favorites, so I'll give it my best and we'll see what happens.
So as Johnny loads his song up, let me tell you this. I stopped in Bermuda for a couple days just to make sure my electronics were working and take care of some last minute business. And there's a little bar up by the airport called Twizzler Inn. Anybody been to Bermuda? Ever been to that bar? So I was kind of stuck. The weather wasn't cooperating, and the people at the marina where I was staying said, well, you should go up to the Twizzler Inn. They got a guy playing music there that night. So I took a cab up there, and the place is about this big, and there's 3 or 4 people in there and myself, and then in walks these 3 couples, and they're just having the time of their life. And one of the couples looked at me and said, what are you doing here? So I told them the story on kind of sailing around the world by myself, and immediately told the musician, who immediately played this song. And so within a few minutes there were like 10 of us dancing to Southern Cross and the Twizzler Inn. So this song kind of really sent me off from Bermuda around the world.
Got out of town on a boat to a southern island.
You can sing along.
Headed for the way to a following sea. we're headed for the trees on the outside, on a downhill road to Puppet City. For the wind now set the head for McKee said. We had 80 feet along the line, nicely making waves in a noisy bar. Another long I tried to call you. On the midnight watch I realized why twice you ran away. Think about how many times I had fallen. Spirits are using me, larger voices calling. What heaven brought you and me cannot be forgotten. I have been around the world.
I guess I lied.
Looking for that woman girl who no love can endure, and you know it will, and you know it will. When you see the Southern Cross for the first time, and you understand why you came this way. 'Cause the truth that you've been running from is so small, but as big as the promise of a coming day. So I'm sailing for tomorrow, but my dreams are dying. My love is an anchor, it's tied to a silver chain. Have my ship, all the flags are flying. It's all that I have left, and music is the name. Yeah, think about how many times I have fallen. Spirits are using me, larger voices calling. What heaven brought you and me cannot be forgotten. I said, here we go. I have been around the world, looking for that woman girl. No love can endure, and you know it will, and you know it will, and you know it will, and you know it will. We bested. Never failed to fail. It was the easiest thing to do. You will survive by being bested. Yeah. Someone comes along to make me forget about loving you and the Southern Cross. Oh, and the Southern Cross. We'll be back in 15 minutes, everybody. Dave Rearick.
Johnny,
you guys.
you know, I can do that finger stuff he does, but it's much better if Johnny does it.
Hey, we're back, everybody. How y'all doing? Do it ain't easy. It's never-ending trail. Across the bridge where I come from, facing the colors of an everlasting sun. Down by the waterside, where I come from, we still listen to the song there on the radio, wanting all of us around. It all goes down. It all goes down. Got time to make it real when nothing's left undone. Turning out the credence from a distant drum. Some find truth way up in the sky. Your best friend's caught up in another lie. Take this wheel and run and drive. The crying tears of a river are washed up in my soul. It's how I run, it's how I roll. It's how I roll. It's how I roll. Let me in, wash me out. This sin has got me running. Won't you keep me out here? Lord, no. Oh, no. The bridge where I come from, facing the colors of an everlasting sun. Down by the waterside, where I come from, where I come from.
Very nice, Johnny.
Thank you, man. So when you were out there, you're in the middle of the ocean, was there anything you missed back home?
Gosh, you know, you always miss your friends and your family, and some of those types of things. I know you know, we always have this huge Thanksgiving celebration at my house, full of friends and family and music and 30, 35 people for dinner and stuff like that. And I happen to be, you know, maybe 10 days away from Cape Town, South Africa. So I was in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean. And I thought I would do just fine with all that. My sister, who was holding Thanksgiving in my absence, figured out how to do a computer-generated phone call from me on the satellite phone to my living room full of people like this is right here, right now. And so You know, we talked and said hellos and had said happy Thanksgivings back and forth, and then hung up the phone, and I realized just how much I miss the close family and the close friends when you're out there that far away from home.
Yeah.
But it really made you appreciate the things you don't have in your day-to-day life.
Anybody have other questions too for Dave? Oh, yes.
Okay, so I asked Johnny this. How did it come to you guys doing this evening together?
Beer. There you go. There you go. No, I think, you know, Johnny writes a lot of original music, and you know, he's got some great downloadable albums and stuff of original music, which I want to hear more about how he got to writing original music and all that stuff. But he had always talked to me about, you know, we should do some corroboration on some of your sailing stories and some of my music, and we talked about doing, you know, over years, probably 4 or 5, maybe 10 years, we talked from time to time. And then just one night we were sitting there thinking, you know, this would be like a really fun event to pull off, and I guess we're pulling it off.
Yeah. That's exactly how it happened.
And there was beer involved. But so Johnny, the original music that you write, and you write a lot of it, I've listened to quite a bit over the years, but how did that come about? How did you start writing original music? That's got to be something really special, kind of like me writing a book, I suppose. But
yeah, when I talked about the different phases of people in my life, going back to when I was 12 or 13, somebody reminded me that the first song I wrote was called "Carrying a Bucket of Water." I have no idea how it goes or what it, but
is that the one with the hole in the bucket and the straw?
That might be.
And the corn fermenting and it turning into whiskey.
There you go. There you go. I think there's. I think by being inspired by that Simon and Garfunkel album, then growing up listening to progressive rock like Genesis, Yes, Rush, and all that, and then everything in between, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, it just, you get inspired by others, and I think if there's anything I wish I would have done earlier, because I did later on, when I realized it would be very valuable, is read books, read. And gives you so much, if I were to have a kid in front of me and like to do is like, you know, don't get any credit cards and read books and start there. And being open to all sorts of information, sometimes I think when and believe me, you guys know that I do the Neil Young thing. It wasn't like I was an over-the-top Neil Young fan. That was one of those rabbit holes that the deeper you got, the more stuff you found, and all of a sudden you've understood about writing metaphorically. You know, how can I say I love you in a different way? You know, like I love you. No, but no, and it just gets you thinking. It gets you to get the thesaurus out. What other words can we work with here? And I think the inspirations of different artists, and it just I felt that's why I wanted to take the band Take a Bite, and that's probably what inspired me to kind of go. It was like, all right, we can do Melissa Etheridge good, and that's a blast, but can we do something of our own? You know, and that's always been a driving thing in my solo music is to do, you know, things that you connect to from other artists, but doggone it, give yourself a chance, and so that's always been a driving thing for me.
Yeah. So I know with a lot of your music, there's sort of there's sometimes a relatively consistent theme in there, or a fairly common theme.
I'm glad you didn't say divorce. No, and this is probably part of our connection, is water. Always seems to, anytime I'm by a lake, or, I mean, there's Johnny sitting by a pond looking at little tadpoles, or whatever. The water's always intrigued me, and actually not even thinking about it, but if you go back to every one of my albums, you'll find something related to water, and of course water is such a great metaphor for so many things. It makes things grow, it sheds tears, you know, so many different things. And if you look at first album, you had Lost at Sea. Then on the second album, Fish Islands. And so there's been a lot of water things.
When's your birthday?
What's that?
When's your birthday?
August 20th.
So you're not a Pisces.
Who's a Leo?
2 days later.
So we'll follow up on what you say. Is it? But I think it's just because I'm just amazed. I can sit there and watch Blue Planet all day long. David Attenborough puts me to sleep. I love that guy, you know. And so, and all the things that are untapped in the ocean. So that's why one of the first things I think about when your journey is, did you see a whale, you know, spout and do those simple things that we see?
Did
And
you?
it's
Did you see a whale spout?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've seen a lot of whales over my years of sailing. On this particular trip, I didn't see that many whales because I wasn't really on the routes of the migration. You know, you have to kind of be on the migration routes to see them. But one of the interesting things, we had a scientist that worked with us because we put out a lot of scientific information. We also collected a lot of data, a lot of what they call citizen scientists or citizen scientry, because it costs so much for research vessels to get out to the middle of the ocean to get research that a lot of the information that comes from the middle of the ocean comes from private vessels that are out there and record it. And so I would take a picture of a bird and then send it to iNaturalist and they would post it. And different people around the world would say, oh, that's a such and such. But I had a camera that had geotagging, so it gave me the latitude, longitude, the time and the date and all that kind of stuff. And I got 2 or 3 notes back where certain species of birds were seen further north than they had been seen before. So it was kind of fun that way. But Tegan Mortimer, who was the scientist who worked with me, was a whale specialist. And she explained to me that the whaling population is about 10% of what it was before they started commercial whaling way back in the, you know, 300 or 400 years ago, I suppose. And so when I'm off of Cabo San Lucas and there's 3 or 4 whales frolicking, I realize there should be 30 or 40.
right.
You know, when I see 1 whale off the Galapagos, I realize there should be 10 out there.
Right.
I did a trip across the North Atlantic a couple of years ago over to Ireland and on in Scotland and then Sweden and stuff like that. And we saw, we probably saw a couple dozen whales over the course of time, but we should have seen 200, you know.
Right. But it is coming back. It is coming back.
Yeah,
because
they
a lot
are
of them
back.
have been suppressed, and
Yeah.
there's
The interesting thing is that the gestation period, I think that's the right word, right? And then they
got meat sold.
okay. You know, when that time when they're being born and being raised and then coming of age for them to have babies themselves is such a long period that it takes quite a while for the population to get significant enough to have the population start to explode. So it's going to be quite a few years yet, but it is on the rebound. It is on the rebound.
Somebody was raising their hand back there. Yeah, go ahead, caller.
Did you by chance see any blue-footed boobies while you were up?
I did, and you know, one of the fun
Wait, a blue-footed what?
blue-footed boobies. So
I think I know the bird you're talking about. Stands about yay high.
They live at Florida,
actually,
right?
they're not quite that tall, but in the Galapagos, they're known in the Galapagos,
Yeah.
and they actually have blue feet, and the blue is a bright blue, and they have a huge wingspan, about a 6 or 7 foot wingspan. So they just kind of, yeah, they're blue-footed boobies, and they just kind of glide along the coastline. But interesting enough, on this one island, I went with a guide and some scientists. On one side of the island are shrubbery trees about 4 or 5 feet high, and that's where all the frigate birds are. And on the windward side of the island, where the wind blows in off the ocean, there's no brush, so the blue-footed boobies nest there. And they just dig out a little shallow in the sand and lay their eggs there. And but the hardest thing about the blue-footed boobies is when I'm giving my talk to 3rd graders. And you put a picture on the screen, and it's a blue-footed bird, and you say that's a blue-footed booby, and you hear nothing but giggles, and they have to repeat the words because it's legal to repeat that word in the classroom when Captain Dave says blue-footed booby.
Is that true that frigates don't land? They can't get their feathers wet at all. That they're out there at sea the whole time, and the only way they can feed is if they just catch a fish out of the air.
Don't land.
I don't know if the frigate I'm talking about is the same thing or not.
The long point, like
Yeah.
not the boat, the bird.
Yeah. And it may very, I know the cormorants are that way sort of too. They're not really supposed to get wet, but they don't have the wax or whatever to keep their wings dry. So I'm not entirely sure about that. But these frigates were on land, and they inflate their chest bright red to attract the in the mating period. The really fascinating birds are these albatross. So you've probably all heard about the albatross in the Southern Ocean.
Yes.
And
There's probably a song about that.
yeah, there is. Yeah.
Well,
and these birds have huge wingspans, and they just soar back and forth, and they kind of glide on the uplift of the wind and the waves, and so they just sail on the wave of the waves and back and forth. And I would just sit and look out the back of the boat as they just go back and forth. It was like they were sewing the wake that I was making back together, and it was beautiful.
Right now, the BBC is doing like a 7 planets, 1 world thing.
Yeah, yeah.
The very last one was on the albatross.
Was it? Yeah.
And it actually is an endangered species. It's falling into that.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. Cindy and I were watching it, and it's one of those deals where it's really windy where they nest, and if the little birds, the little guys, if they fall out, they don't get any help from the parents. It's the parents can't recognize that they're not there, so that bird either makes it back into the nest for protection or faces other consequences. But anyway, if you guys follow that, or I have to on demand, it's all about the albatross. It's the very last on Saturday nights, I believe.
It's a beautiful bird, and it seldom flaps its wings. It just generally glides back and forth. Yeah.
Let me do a song called Birds.
Go for it. Go for it.
Lover, there will be another one. Lover, underneath the clear blue sun. Tomorrow, see the things that never come. Stay. When you see me fly away without you, shadow on the things you know, feathers fall around you, show you the way to go. It's over. It's over. Nestled in your wings, my little one, special when the morning brings the sun. Tomorrow, see the things that never come. Today, when you see me fly away without you, shadow on the things you know, feathers fall around you, show you the way to go. It's over. It's over.
Very nice, very nice.
Thank you. You know, it's fun, like when going back to the writing music, there's a lot of things that inspire me. I think I'm an open book. If there's something goofy that happens, I either make a mental block, or the smartphones are so good for us people who can't remember stuff. And if you really use it the right way, hence if you have Apple, if you know that note section, or if you have a voice recorder, if you look at my voice recorder right now, there's about 120 ideas. Some of them are at the embryo stage, where songs that you might even recognize if you follow my original music, where the original idea came from. And you know, when I go to John at Thunderclap, I want to be prepared, or I'm working on something, or maybe it's a line I hear or a phrase. I just make sure I have a place to put that. And then when you go back and course, I spend a lot of time on the road, so I'll listen to that. And boy, what a great way from a writing standpoint to draw from some of these things that obviously meant something enough for me to write it down. And I can't tell you how helpful that's been from.
I do a similar thing with my writing but I don't use a smartphone. I use paper and pen. So my desk is just my desk has 120 notes on it, just like your iPhone has. But,
Analog.
yeah, very analog. It's annoying me anymore. There's so much to that. But so when the moment comes, Johnny, what does it feel like? Does it feel like, wow, there's a song I gotta do right now, or is it something that takes quite a process before you get to that point, or is it both?
It's man. Sometimes you got something 5 minutes and you're there. Sometimes it's like 5 days, and some days it's just like there's no consistent. I bring this guy out tonight. This is a guitar that's probably responsible for writing mostly everything I've ever written. There's always the guitar.
My guitar.
Cindy's guitar, isn't it?
Well, Johnny's sorting it out. You know, one of the things you just said about things come to you.
Oh, it's the mute button. I forgot about that.
Oh, there you go.
There it is. So this has always been the guitar. It's been kind of like in the living room or by the bed, and I wrote a song, wrote many songs where it started with this, and you can see the kind of tore up there, and I don't know if that's why Willie Nelson eventually did a hole, but here's a song that I wrote that was kind of popular, but this is how it kind of started out. Everything come to me, no, it knocks me out and picks me up again. Oh, I feel the whole world. So I would just kind of like make up words, but that's not the words I ended up using. But that's how it started, and so it ended up being "Would You Be My Girl?" And that would be a. Every time, Lord, that I say, everything seemed to come my way. Right inside where my heart resides, something better calling out to me. Would you be my girl? I will be your everything. Run around the world, open arms, music, sing. Would you be my girl? Would you be my girl? Would you be my girl? Your energy that comes with this, you know, it knocks me out and picks me up again. You make the hills come alive from afar. With each every daybreak, there you are. Would you be my girl? I will be your everything. Run around the world, open arms to music, sing. Would you be my girl? Would you be my girl? Would you be my girl? Oh yeah. Would you be my girl? I will be your everything. Sail around the world, open arms to music, sing. Would you be my girl? Would you be my girl? Would you be my girl? Going downtown, got my feet down, ain't no trouble ahead. Going downtown, I got my feet down, ain't no trouble ahead. Mama told me that maybe someday I'll find my one. Mama told me that maybe someday I'll find my one. Mama told me that maybe someday Mama told me that baby someday, Mama told me that baby someday I will find my one. Mama told me, Mama told me, Mama told me I will find my one. Oh yeah, yeah. Skies here today, well, every song seemed to come my way. If you hang around these parts here today, to think about it, girl, please stay.
Very nice, very nice.
Thank you.
So, interesting, Johnny.
Thank you, guys. And then the actual recording is more of a rocking, where I didn't even use this guitar.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how sometimes, and in a little bit I'll play you a song that was specifically written for this guitar. But this has been the embryo of so much music and my baby. Yes.
So kind of interesting. I mean, we're talking about our various different crafts and stuff like that, but I noticed that guitar sounds much different than this other guitar.
Yeah, this is a classical guitar. It's nylon strings.
Oh, okay.
So like if you want to. Yeah, this is a little different than that. Yeah.
Very, very inspiring guitar. I imagine Cindy kind of likes that guitar too.
Zippy baby boo. But actually, it's kind of interesting. Cindy said, well, "You should name your guitars."
Right? You should.
And I did. And this one is named Arrival. This is Arrival. And that's because I wrote a song for this called Arrival on my first album. And it was basically just a little love story about two people that on a particular date they realized that their whole game went up to it arrived at a loving level. So I could play it. Okay.
Go for it, John.
Okay.
No, I was just kidding.
The tools of his trade, needy people at bay, running to and from, hearing sounds from afar. Will they have to go and wrench another car? Think I'll just punch out. He trips out of the shower, races to his bike. Everything's in order, just wants to make it right. Tonight she sings, gazing at the images and pictures of home. She dances underneath the tree, keeps from getting wet. Will this time be there or something better yet? Perhaps there's something better, more meets the eye, the telling of their tale when they discover that their love has arrived.
nice. Very nice. I could listen to that all night long.
Sometimes it's very hard because there are no dots on here, so sometimes you miss things by one. And it's, somebody told me, oh, that means it's a good guitar. I don't know about that, but it makes me want to take a Sharpie and put dots there and stuff. But anyway, this guitar has been a great songwriting machine right here. Arrival, everybody.
Yeah, very nice. Very
I want
nice.
to know, is that the one that you used to write Dave's songs?
Okay, so Dave, when did you feel the most alone?
Okay.
Okay, so 2 questions. I'll answer yours real question. No, I did not write Dave's song on this, and those, that song that I wrote was on that guitar back there, so that takes care of that.
Okay.
And we'll get to Dave's song shortly. She had a,
What was your question again, Sharon?
When did you feel the most alone? You're good at being alone, I know that.
Yeah.
Take an action, split it.
When did you feel the most alone?
I would have to say that, you know, after the phone hung up on that Thanksgiving dinner,
Yeah.
when I was, you know, all of a sudden it was quiet and it was just the sound of the ocean and the wind and the sails and, you know, the laughter of my friends and all that stuff faded out of my memory, and I realized, you know, just how far I was away from everywhere.
You had to know that the love of your friends and everyone that was supporting you was around you.
Oh, absolutely. You know, there's no question that there was a tremendous amount of people supporting you and stuff like that. But, you know, it's that feeling of loneliness wasn't desperation or whatever it was. It was, I actually appreciate and love being alone a lot. But there are times when it's particularly important.
did it help? Was it drive you though? Also like letting you know that even though you're enjoying the time with yourself, that there's really a nice light at the end of your journey, and that's home, family, and friends?
Yeah, you know, obviously, it's the old saying, you know, you can't know darkness unless you know light, and you can't know heat unless you know cold. And so you can't really understand loneliness until you've been around a lot of people, and you can't really understand how beautiful people are until you've been alone. So, you know, as you know, as that loneliness or a lack of interaction with people would start to build, you would start to count the days to the finish, you know, to the next harbor, and start to plan, like, at 5 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, I'm going to get a cold beer. And then a phone call to a friend and this and that and all stuff. And then the wind would die, and you'd float for a couple more days and say, okay, well, like at 5 o'clock on Tuesday, you know, I'll get a beer. And, you know, that kind of thing.
Hey, Dave, what are you going to talk about me? Come on, Dave, I've been sitting around here all day. What the hell? Come on.
So, you know, most...
Capita.
This is my buddy Franklin. From relation to Wilson. This is from the Franklin Sporting Goods Company. So you'll often hear me referring to we. You know, well, we sailed around the world, and so as a mind without a whole lot of interaction, other inserts of other people and stuff like that, things start to develop a personality. So the boat itself is Bo, Bodacious Dream, and so that became Bo, and that had a personality in itself. My autopilots that drove the boat when I was not driving myself were called Otto, and then Franklin here as well. And Franklin came to be about a week before I took off. A bunch of friends gathered for dinner, and they had a little roast afterwards, which I wasn't prepared for or expecting. And they gave me a few different gifts. You know, one was a book about a boat that sank. You know, some of the gifts weren't really all that thoughtful, but it was fun anyways. But so they gave me this. Yeah. So I really don't like the song Emmett Fitzgerald. People say, why not? It's a great song. And I said, I really don't like to hear about boats going down and people dying in the ocean. You know. But so at the end of the night, they gave me Franklin here, and I thought, oh, that's kind of cute and all that stuff. And the next day, I took it out of the boat and stuffed it up in the port bunk there, and it was, you know, an hour or two later that Franklin's talking to me like, you know, you should pack that stuff on the other side of the boat. You don't have enough chocolate chip cookies to make it to Cape Town. Okay, I'll go buy a couple of cases. Do you have enough water? I don't know. That was an awful sail change, Dave. Why did you do that? So I had very long, extensive conversations with Otto, and
You only gave him one eyebrow, though. Is there?
I didn't do any of that. That was done for me. So
okay.
that's part of the artistic license of the friends that gave it to me.
Okay.
Yeah. But quite a wonderful. I mean, if Franklin could talk, I would not be here right now.
Hey, I want to share with you guys. Do a lot of you have his book by chance? And have all of you guys read it, pretty much?
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I want to try to make good use of our time here, but I wanted to, Dave and we had started this conversation a few years ago, because I knew he had so much connections to the water and the sea, and I have a love for the sea and love the old man in the sea. You know, still that movie with, what's his name, who's bringing the shark back, or brings the fish back with the shark.
Old man in the sea.
Spencer Tracy.
Yeah, Spencer Tracy, yes, good call. Anyway, so originally I said, Dave, what if we wrote a concept album? I wasn't even thinking like a song or anything, just let's do the big thing. And you know, we always said, yeah, that'd be a great idea. Let's kind of, maybe I can put some music together and you write some things. And fast forward, Dave goes on this journey, and now he's writing his book, and he wrote the book Spirit of a Dream. And it's an amazing book, you guys. It's such a...
Thank you.
And again, here's where I feel so lucky, and even just the fact that he would even consider it is because I know there's so many great musicians in this area. There's a hotbed of musicians, and I said, you know, I would really love a shot at maybe writing a song called Spirit of a Dream.
Yes.
And he gave me the green light to give it a whirl. But he did say, you know what, don't write one thing until you've read the book.
Love it.
And he was really insistent. I said, don't even think about anything, read the book. And so I'm so glad he gave me that instruction, because at the end of the day, you can write about all the courses and all the different things, but you know what? It's this man's relationship with not only the environment, the water, the people, and the love that he gives and exuberates, but it really just, it's simplified down to his love for doing what he does, and that's, you know, sailing and caring about people around him and the world around him, and that's what inspired me to write the lyrics that I wrote for his song, or his book.
Johnny, I said I'd give you $20. I didn't want the $50.
There you go.
Thank you very much. It was really a lot of fun to write the book, and the funny thing is, you know, when you're sailing around the world, you have to keep a log. It's by law that you keep a log, and so you keep track of the weather and, you know, where you're at, your latitude, longitude, and at the same time in the margins I would write, you know, personal things that were going on or how my mindset was or what it was, and then I would refer to these logs when I started, you know, writing the book and all stuff. And I was flying from California back home, and a friend sitting next to me starts laughing. I said, "What are you laughing at?" She goes, "Look at your log." And I look at it on the front of the page. It says, pardon my French, it says, "This fucking sucks." In that particular passage, the weather was particularly bad.
So that's where it ended in California?
What's that?
That's where you ended your journey, is California?
No, in Newport, Rhode Island. But I was working on the book at that point, so I was reviewing my log on the plane. Okay. And it, you know, in big letters, it was referring to a very miserable weather day. Yeah.
Was there anything that, for whatever reason, you didn't journal? Did you miss anything that you said, God, I wish I could remember? I mean,
you know, there's so many.
Do you think you got everything you wanted to? Is there anything that you would say, you know what, I got to go do it again?
You know, we always say I got to go do it again.
Yeah.
You know, everybody asks me, would you do it again? I said, yeah, I do.
I want to help.
A few more stops and a few more things to see.
Sure.
You know, you're given the experience, and the experience is 24/7. You know, day on and day out, and there's so much that becomes a part of it that you know you can't peel it out as specific stuff or whatever. But then there's a lot of amazing experiences and journeys that happen and all. Yeah.
What is some of the most specialist things? I mean, you've got some. I want to make sure we get into this because I know we got just a few more minutes and things. I'd really like you to. There's some things that I know are very powerful to you that you wanted to share, and I want to make sure we do that.
Well, you know, the people ask me all the time, you know, what's like the most special thing that happened out there? What was the most amazing thing you experienced, or what came about? You know, and there were just so many of them. It's hard to peel them all apart. But the one that really struck me. So I don't know if you had a chance to look at the charts in the back room or not, but I was sailing between Cape Town, South Africa, and Australia. So I was south and east of Madagascar. I'd already lived through the cyclone that was pretty torrential, and it was late at night, and I was down below, kind of half awake, doing some stuff, and I heard thunder. And so I went out on deck because you just don't really get thunderstorms in the ocean all that much, where you actually get the thunder and all that stuff. And there was a flash or two of lightning. And then there was a rain, and the rain felt so good because it's sweet water. Everything is salty. My lips are salty, my hands are salty, everything. And you get this fresh water rain, and it feels soft and it's sweet on your thing. And then all of a sudden around me were these glowing orbs in the water, probably about the size of a softball. Hundreds of them, as far as I could see in all directions. And I'm sailing along at about 8 knots, you know, the sky is starting to clear, the thunderstorms moved away, and I'm looking at these things, and I'm trying desperately to figure out what they are. I get out my big flashlight, and I'm shining my flashlight down on them, and I'm trying to figure out what they are, and they're just going off, and I can't make any sense of it. And all of a sudden, my mind just kind of grabbed on and said, hey, look, stop. This is not something you need to figure out, something you need to be a part of. And so I just kind of let my body relax, and my mind relax, and my eyes relax, and so these glowing orbs start streaming by. It's almost like a slow motion hyperspace in Star Wars. And they're iridescent in color and stuff, and they're just going by. And then they slowly started to thin out, and then they kind of went away. And I felt like, oh gosh, you know, and it was really a special moment out there. And I'd like to, if you don't mind, I'd like to just read one paragraph from the epilogue that really speaks to that particular moment.
Yeah.
Want me to hold that for you?
Yeah, I think I can do this.
Okay.
Let's see if I can see it without taking my glasses off. It starts. So this is in the epilogue. You have to read the whole epilogue to get the real power of this. But I journeyed to learn more about what I am and where I live than to experience the fear of a single unknown. And so in the raw breath of this evening wind, stranded on this comfortable shore, I asked myself, what did we get from this? The answer isn't easy, nor how it came to be. But to get it, I bared my soul to the sea. I reduced myself to heart, mind, blood, fatigue, torn tissues, and tears, to a vulnerability wide enough open to hear the cry of the sea and the whimper of the dolphins. From their tales, I learned we don't need to conquer the sea. We need to live it. We don't need to have more than enough, but enough for now. We don't need to reduce the sea to a level we understand. We need to understand the sea at the level it is and grow ourselves from the accumulation of this knowledge. And it was in that moment with those glowing orbs that I realized I don't need to understand this. I don't need to conquer it. I don't need to define it in something. I need to realize the fact that I'm a part of this. We're all a part of this earth. We're all a part of this world. We're all a part of this whole experience. We're not on the outside looking in. We are part of the whole thing. And that was a pretty powerful moment in my life.
So I was at fish camp, and Dave was showing up, and this was the first time I had a chance to introduce the song that I was writing for him called Spirit of a Dream. And I'm telling you, that was, I have butterfly moments, and I'm like, oh gosh, please Dave, tell me if it sucks, or whatever. I really didn't want him to say yes unauthentically, just for feelings. I really wanted to, we have a good start here. And it was kind of a blustery, kind of cold day. Nobody was on the deck, so we just finished the gig inside fish camp. And so I said, Dave, step in my office. Where's that? Oh, it's outside where nobody can hear us.
Nobody can hear us. It's about 45, 50
Yeah,
degrees out,
yeah,
and it's,
yeah.
you know, it's a cold fall night, and Johnny pulls out this guitar.
Yeah, and I played this song for him, and I didn't want to look up at him. I kind of finished the song. It was like a scary movie. Give me a pillow. I don't want to. And I looked up, and his eyes.
And I did not sing along. I promise.
No. But his eyes were kind of watery, and just like it was like when people want to ask me some of my favorite moments in music, that is right up there. Probably is one of the top things because this man's passion of what he's done, and even given me the opportunity to do that, and to know that we were on a course of having something we were hoping was going to be special. And we can move forward with that is probably one of the best moments that I'll never forget, when he just knew that we thought we had something here that connected with how he felt the song should be. And this might be a...
Would you play it for us?
Absolutely, sure.
This is called Spirit of the Dream by Johnny V.
Fly me from west, sailing your wings on the spirit of a dream that few have seen. And I fall to forgotten from currents beyond, for the guidance of autumn leads me till dawn. Carry on, carry on. Watch your skies that I cast down to you, crashing through tides as my bow cutting through, observing all over a nautical scene, forging this life in the spirit of a dream. La-di-yay-ho, 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 oh. Attacking my soul, using every direction, coming about. Well, my heart's in connection upon the horizon. I gaze without fear for this body of water. Is why I'm here. Carry on, carry on. Watch your skies that I cast onto you, crashing through tides as my bow cutting through, observing all over the nautical scene, forging this life. I'm forging my life in the spirit of a dream. La-di-yay-ho, la-di-yay-ho. Watch your skies that I cast onto you, crashing through tides as my bow cutting through, observing all over nautical scene, forging this life. Watch your skies that I cast onto you, crashing through tides as my bow cutting through, observing all over nautical scene, forging this life. dream, spirit of a dream. Mario, Mario, Mario. World of the oceans, wash me on down. World of the oceans, wash me on down. World of the oceans, wash me on down. Wash me on down. Wash me on down.
Thank you, guys.
Great stuff.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
yeah, that was
Dave,
amazing.
thank you for inspiring me, and just this journey's not over. Is this something you guys would like to do again? Is this? I know he's got a lot more stories, and we got a lot of things. But is there anything you'd like to ask or anything at all?
Can we do it tomorrow?
What's that?
Security.
The most interesting customs experience. When I pulled in New Zealand, New Zealand was where Bodacious Dream was built, so we came back home there, and it was a horrendous beat up the Cook Straits coming into Wellington, and in the last couple of miles coming in, everything went wrong, and I just really had my hands full. But I finally got in the harbor, and Lapo came on board, and he sailed with me back, and the guys knew I was coming in. It was like 10 o'clock at night. It's pretty dark out, and we pulled into the dock, and the customs guys just came on board and said, "Hey, can you just sign these couple papers and we'll get out of your hair?" And I said, "Well, don't you want to inspect the boat and all?" And they said, "Hey, man, dude, if you're smuggling drugs single-handed from Cape Town, South Africa, there's not much we can do for you." So they said, just give us your garbage bags, and we'll be on our way. So I said, "Well, I'll throw the garbage out." And they said, "Oh, no, we got to take your garbage and burn it all." I thought, "Oh, okay." That's what they have to protect the environment there in New Zealand. They don't want you bringing anything foreign in, so they took all my garbage. Quite nice host to take the garbage off the boat and take care of everyone. And the funny thing is, so Lapo and a couple of guys, were there at the dock, and we had a couple beers, and then Lapo says, "Well, here, Dave, here's the key to the showers, and we'll come back and get you in the morning." And nobody got closer than about that far away from me after 50 days at sea. But I took the key to the shower, and I walked over to the shower, and I walked in with my full foul weather gear and everything on. Just walked right in the shower, and just one at a time, rinsed it all off, took it off, did a whole thing, and it's like midnight, and there's a loud party going on up the street. So there's a young guy in the bathrooms with me. I said, "What's that party going on?" He said, "Oh, you don't want to go up there." I said, "What is it?" He goes, "It's a Sevens festival. It's a rugby festival. You don't want to go up there." I hadn't seen people in 50 days. I was going up there. So I get up to the chain link, and there's two policemen there, and I said, "Is there an ATM inside there?" And they said, "Well, yeah, just down that way. But why do you want to go there? There's one over that way." And I said, "Well, So I walk in, I get 20 bucks, and I buy a beer, and I'm walking down the street, and I got sea legs, so I'm swaying back and forth. And I was the oldest person by twice of anybody in this crowd, and they were all swaying with me. I thought it was so nice of them to just join me.
That's good. That is good.
One of the best tasting beers I'd ever had.
You know what? Before we close shop here, Vestina and everybody here at Brewery Lodge, thank you for letting us host this.
By all means, thank you guys so much. And thank all these wonderful people for coming.
You guys, thank you so much. There's so much.
It's so privileged to be here with you too.
Hey Dave, I had heard that it was a chance meeting at the Mackinac that actually got this thing started. And can you talk about how it is that you got the opportunity to do this venture?
I think what you're referring to is my meeting of the sponsors,
Right.
who happened to be good. Jeff Urbina was a single-handed sailor on the Great Lakes as well, in the solo Mackinac races, which we did. And so that's where I met him to begin with, and we developed our friendship, and then it grew from there. And then he became very, very successful with his business, and this is something that he'd always endeavored on doing, although he no longer had the capability of doing it. So I think he saw a chance in living out his dream by supporting me to do it.
That's really cool. Good, great question.
Why was the race?
Those races are really difficult to pull together from a logistics standpoint. You're dealing with competitors from all around the world, and then you have to do a worldwide event. So Josh Hall, who was the guy who was organizing the race, and they had run one version of it, and then this was coming the 2 years. They run them every 2 or 4 years, and so in setting this all up, he had a sponsor who was helping to support the race and covered a lot of the cost, as just like a NASCAR has sponsors or whatever it is. And that sponsor unfortunately met their fate unexpectedly, and that canceled a business deal, and so he had a very difficult time pulling the rest of the financial situation together to actually pull off a race that goes around the world. And he started by postponing it for a year, and then ultimately just couldn't pull it together.
Dave, where's Bodacious Dream right now?
So when I was done with it, then my sponsors, Jeff and Gay, allowed one of our other Bodacious Racing crew members to take it across the Atlantic to do a transatlantic race. He got it across the Atlantic. It didn't really pan out for him to do the race back across the Atlantic, so at that point we donated it to Oak Cliff Racing, and Oak Cliff Racing is an organization on Long Island. They sent over 4 young men, about 23 to 26 years old, to race the boat back across the Atlantic. So I spent probably a couple weeks with them, getting them sort of familiar with the boat, helping them with that, and then another guy took off with them to train them a little bit. They sailed down to the islands off of Portugal and started a race across the Atlantic, and I think they won that race across the Atlantic. So the boat still remains with Oak Cliff Racing at this point in time.
One last question. For those of us that live right around this area, is there anything going on Michigan City or just along the lakefront here that we should maybe know about, like maybe hearing something tonight might inspire us to hop on somebody's sailboat or anything, I don't know.
If you're interested in sailing, whether it be sailing or racing or whatever, the Michigan City Yacht Club is a fantastic resource for that. They run a sailing program. They run a junior sailing program. They now run an adult sailing program where they'll teach you to sail. But they also have a regular racing program on the weekends and sometimes during the weekdays. And it's not all just hard racing boats, some of it's cruising division. And every boat owner is always looking for crew members. And so if you're really interested in that, you kind of connect to Michigan City Yacht Club, which I think is mcyc.com, and tell them you're interested in it. And people are not going to leave you behind on the dock. They'll find you a ride on the boat. So if you want to get involved in it, it's a great place to start.
And I do believe
Yes,
that there's going to be Obi.
I have a question.
A question here?
Yeah.
Vestina is the best looking helmsman
With a
you'll
hat
ever
and a
find.
t-shirt.
Wait, what?
You may not
I
win
want
the
to buy
race,
something right
but
now.
you'll
How
have
do
a
I
good
get
time.
Okay.
Okay, Tim, on, you have a question back here?
Can I buy a t-shirt and a hat?
Absolutely. She wants to buy you a t-shirt and a hat, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so.
Absolutely.
Right now?
Yeah.
Who do I go to?
Be there in a second. Be there in a second. You guys, thank you. Just not enough for what you guys have been for us today. You guys, thank you so much. David,
Thank you. Yeah,
we got to do this again.
absolutely. It's good fun.
And you know what? He's got a lot of videos he's going to be putting with the song that we played for you earlier, and just let's stay in touch, everybody. Let's keep everything going. Thank you, Thunderclap. Thank you, Brewery Lodge, and most of all, thank you guys, everybody. Thank you all very much. Hope you had a great time.
Thank you, Johnny D.
Thank you, brother. Absolutely.
Winds fly me from west, sailing your wings. The spirit of a dream, the few have seen. are forgotten for currents beyond, for the guidance of autumn which leads me till dawn. Care